Good. Hello. How nice to be back on terra firma.
Mount Kilimanjaro is the man we so admire. Mount Kilimanjaro, could Phil Dave have gone any higher? That's it. I just made that up.
I can't believe that Dr. Linda is sitting in the digital green room listening to this. She must be an absolute
She's bloody
abject
lucky.
horror.
She's bloody lucky to be listening to this. I know she's in a rush, so I've got so much to do here. Let's bring her on, shall we? And without further ado,
Oh my goodness!
Hi, Linda.
Linda Papadopoulos.
Hi guys, how are you?
Well,
all the best for your presence.
It's a long story, Linda. How long you got, quite frankly? Are you good? Everything all right?
Thank you. How are you?
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining what's left of Phil and what's left of myself. Phil has just climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm not joking.
That's amazing. Seriously.
No, that's not a joke.
I got back yesterday. I got back yesterday morning, Dr. Linda. I'm a bit knackered, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Was it amazing? I can imagine. Must have been really
okay. Well, I will bore people appropriately when we're not here to talk about something else, which obviously we are. But just in summation, I'd say that it was an incredible experience, one that I'm not keen to replicate. But I would also stress that I have no regrets doing it, but my legs might say otherwise.
Yeah. And Linda, not that I'm trying to get in on the act, but I keep it to ourselves. I did go to Aldi yesterday and walked up and down quite a few aisles.
Wow. Okay. And look, that frozen section can be cold, right? And you got up, you got there.
Yeah. I mean, it's not all one way street. You know, just because he climbs up some blooming mountain, because he's bored shitless. Anyway, Dr. Linda, why are you here? We're thrilled to see you. Always a welcome guest.
It's lovely to be here. I'm here because I've been working with Gambleware, and they've launched the first ever harms prevention campaign for women related to gambling harms. And there's some just really interesting stuff that came out of the study they did.
Now I love this because isn't it amazing that instantly? Well, it's very strange the way the mind works, and God knows I know you know this, Dr. Linda, more than anyone else, but. As soon as you say gambling, first thing that springs to mind is a bloke sitting in a casino. I know it's wrong. I know it's wrong, but it's what springs to mind.
I always think that. You're right.
Yeah, and I think therein lies the problem. To me, I've got to say, when I started kind of working on this, it reminded me of the whole issue with heart disease, right? Again, you used to say heart attack. It was a guy that came to mind.
That's right.
And it's a lot to kind of say, well, this happens to women. And it's the same thing here. And some really kind of fascinating things come out of this thing, like the rising cost of living, we're finding could lead to an increase in gambling harms, right? So
guaranteed.
12% of women already using gambling to supplement household income. They're experiencing mental health issues. And the thing is, because we don't talk about it, it seems that stigma is a particular barrier to women, right? There's this notion that this shouldn't be happening to me. This is something that I should be able to control. And of course, the fact that the stigma is there, the shame comes. With shame comes secrecy. And with secrecy, it kind of is a huge barrier to seeking support and help. And therein lies the problem.
This is going to sound very wrong. Is it just sort of a back? Is it kind of like a back? Sorry, no, I was going to say, I know this sounds really wrong, but is it in some sort of way like a real backhanded compliment to women that women couldn't possibly go down those particular avenues that men go down? In other words, sort of society has this vision of a woman behaving a hell of a lot more in a certain way, should we say, that maybe they don't see men behaving. I know that sounds really strange, but that's the only thing I can think of.
I think that we have different expectations, right, in our society, and we know that this is an issue. We've got these stereotypes, and I think with women, one of the big ones is, and we know that women, I think they make something in the region of 80% of all the purchasing decisions. So the idea that they're not as impulsive, that they can control the the purses of the home. I think that's a big part. I think the other one, exactly as you both said, you immediately think of a guy in a seedy, casino somewhere. Actually, a lot of gambling takes place online. And I think for women also, we're finding that there's a real social element. So there's a kind of like, a social connection element online. And that, along with the natural dangers of kind of getting used to sort of doing something, getting kind of your reward system being hacked, leads to these problems.
I'm so glad you're here, because this is a subject which is very close to the heart of Men's Radio Station, where 50% of the audience are women, by the way, Dr. Linda. And it's something that Phil and I, and also Neil during the week, that we talked about, and we've talked about for years. One of my absolute biggest beefs, and I'd love your input on this, is that gambling's meant, the way that it is portrayed on TV, the endless onslaught of adverts. It's fun. It's hilarious. No, it's not. It can get so quickly out of hand. Why are these gambling adverts allowed on TV? They're really, I think it's as dangerous as smoking.
It absolutely is dangerous. And the thing is, the brain often orientates to just remember the good stuff. So if you ever speak to someone who is being harmed by gambling, they'll often remember the big wins, but they won't remember the 50 losses before.
That was my dad. That was my dad.
Is that right? Yeah, it's a very common, that sort of selective amnesia. We kind of think of, we focus on the thing. And look, I think it's critical for anyone listening out there, if you think it's an issue for you or someone you love, there's a few things you can look out for. Number one, if you're kind of losing track of time, if you said to yourself, look, I'm just gonna go in and go on in this poker site, I'll spend 20 minutes, and 3 hours later you're still there. That's an issue. If you've said, I've got £50 disposable income this month to use, and £150 later you're still spending, that's an issue. And I think the third one, if you're finding that it's getting in the way of your relationships, you're keeping secrets. So your friend, your partner, whoever is saying, hey, what are you doing? And you smack that laptop shut, or you kind of hide what's going on there, again, is a big issue that you need to kind of see as a red flag.
You see, the thing is, I go back to my dad for a minute. He was a huge horse gambler, didn't like casinos, but he'd always say to me, and I quite liked casinos, but he'd always say to me two things. And I wonder, again, what you think about this, Dr. Linda. Number one is, say you have 50 quid in your pocket. When that 50 quid has gone, that's it. So whether you make the 50 quid last all evening, or it lasts 2 spin of the roulette wheel or whatever, that's it. You don't. And the other thing is so important is, don't chase the debt. You will never, you will need a JCB digger to get you out of the hole you will dig if you start chasing the debt. Don't double down.
Absolutely. Look, to me, I think one of the most stark sort of data points to come out of the Gamble Aware campaign is this idea that women are hoping to supplement their income, through gambling. So the assumption being that not only will I try and fix the debt, but I'll be able to kind of maintain this in a way that I can do it regularly. I mean, it shows that kind of break with reality, with the reality of what gambling is.
It is addictive. There's no two ways about it. I mean, those online sites are designed to be very zappy, very zippy, very colorful, lots of primary colors there. And they are trying to get your brain to think that it is fun, but it's addictive, without a doubt.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's when, if you kind of think of the old casinos, what would they do? They'd get rid of clocks. They'd have no natural
light. Windows. Yeah, no windows, so as not to be in the daylight. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think of media platforms, again, what do social media platforms do? They help you lose track of time. You've got the infinite scroll. You've got those kind of little dopamine receptors, so they kind of try and hook you in with that little bit of reward. And here you've got a combination of two. Plus, we have 50% of the population not speaking about that this might be an issue for them. And it really is.
It's strange, though. It's almost as if we need some sort of, I know it sounds daft, but almost some sort of dopamine legislation, because I think people can actually get addicted to the rush of dopamine. And the fact that we don't have anything in place that sells any, say, social media, I know I bang on about this all the time, but I really mean it. It's something I'm very, very passionate about. The fact that we don't have legislation that says to social media, you are not allowed to make yourself as addictive as you do. You are not allowed to lure people in and prey on one of the most natural chemicals that gives people a rush is just absolutely staggering. I really, really get so frustrated the fact that we haven't woken up to this yet. There's no coincidence. It cannot be a coincidence that we're facing one of the biggest mental health crises that we've ever known, probably since the beginning of time. And yet we still have social media running wild. We still have gambling running wild. All of these things, I know gambling's regulated, but it's not regulated in quite the way it should be, let's be honest. All of these different sources of, and I say the word pleasure in the loosest possible sense, pleasure that is totally and utterly not legislated in the way it is meant to be. It cannot be a coincidence that we've got such mental health problems at the moment.
No, look, I mean, the fact of the matter is that our technological development is outpacing our evolutionary development, our social development. It is. So you're absolutely right. We're constantly playing catch up. And I think the more we talk about it and the more we kind of, it's that key to raise awareness and speak about it, the more likely we're going to make something happen, because you're right. It's sort of, I think for the first few years of social media, we're sleepwalking through it. I think now we're starting to see some changes come about it. It definitely is not enough, but hopefully, we're moving in the right direction, because I think people are cottoning on to the fact that we can be hacked. Our reward systems can indeed be hacked.
It's not just that, and I know you're not here to talk about social media, although online gambling is pretty damn akin to it. But my view has always been that social media, slandering somebody or libeling somebody on social media, should be the same as if you wrote a book and slandered somebody, or if you were in a newspaper article and slandered somebody. It's no different. It's in the public domain. It is a publication.
I always think it's kind of like a bathroom door, social media. It's like what people used to write on the bathroom doors.
Yes.
All junk on, and I think
for a good time, ring Phil. That's how we met.
Digitally now.
Oh, I see.
Congratulations to you.
Yeah, I guarantee no one's ever written that before. I promise.
It was a cheat. Yeah, well, for a really boring time. It's how much longer have we got you? Because I know you're always
unfortunately busy. Yeah, not much.
You got to go. What would you? All right, to just round it up, because I know how busy you are, and we're thrilled that you could drop in on a Friday. What advice could you possibly give to try and help?
I think number one is stand up to the stigma. A stigma isn't helping you. It's feeding into the problem. So seek support. Visit begambleaware.org. There's a bunch of free confidential advice and support and information, or the National Gambling Helpline. I think it's you can reach them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like any problem, the sooner you address it, the more likely it is that you'll get through it.
And also, I don't know about you, but to me, stigma is basically born out of ignorance. And the awful truth is that most ignorant people don't really matter. So please, 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 if you think you've got a problem, do something. Don't worry about what other people think. It's so not worth it.
Dr. Linda, always a pleasure and a joy to see you. Have a lovely weekend. And thank you. What you're doing, especially with this subject, is so damn important, because it's an epidemic as far as I'm concerned. It really is.
Thank you.
Bless you. Thanks a lot.
Lovely.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, Dr. Linda.
Bye-bye. Bye. Oh, love her. She's great. She's great. Now then, welcome back.
Don't say it like that. Now then.
Don't say it like that. No, I would just say I'd never do that. I hope he's somewhere in hell. I hope he's in the 7th ring of hell, burning eternally. What a shame he didn't get caught out. By the way,
hello.
Did you see? Yeah, hello. So Mount Kilimanjaro. Yeah, I can see that, obviously. Oddly enough, your mother was phoning me 7 times a day. It was driving me mad. Have you heard from him? Is he all right? I don't know. Linda, I'll be honest. I'm not sure.
I did warn you both I might be out of signal. It wasn't my fault.
Yeah, I know. So, how did you cope? Because I really thought you were joking.
How long have you got?
Well, no, I don't want to. I don't want it to turn into a David Attenborough 5-part series. But on the other hand, I'm really curious.
Well, let me start off by saying, right, whatever I say now, no regrets of doing it. I'm very pleased I did it, but I would never repeat anything like that again. It was hell in many, many senses. So I think the most important thing is at the core of everything is the lack of oxygen. Okay. Nothing can prepare you for whatever altitude sickness is going to do to you. Because the truth is people react to altitude in different ways. So even if you go through some sort of training, it's not going to necessarily prepare you for what you are going to face as an individual, because you don't know how you're going to react. The way I reacted was constant headache, which is quite typical. And if you can imagine this constant headache, normally what one does is that obviously maybe they take a couple of painkillers, go and have a lie down, and then the headache's cured. It wasn't possible to cure the headache.
And what height did that start? So I've always been
probably around 3,000 meters. And bearing in mind, Kilimanjaro
goes 9,000 feet in old money.
Yeah, but bearing in mind that Kilimanjaro goes up to around 5,000 meters, so there was still 2,000 where it could get increasingly worse. Now, you've got to think along the lines of that if you've got this permanent headache, thank you, Dan, that's very kind. Bearing in mind that sort of if you have a constant headache and you can't sleep it off, you can't get rid of it, painkillers maybe numb it for a couple of hours, but that's it. You can't live off of painkillers. So there was a constant headache. And it's quite a scary thought when you think the reason why you got the headache is because you're basically starving your brain of oxygen. So if you think of it like that, that's quite a scary prospect. The other thing I wasn't prepared for is the sleep. Now, what do? Evening, go to sleep, relax, a couple of hours later, you feel much better. Sleep doesn't happen when you've got no oxygen. I can't explain it. Most of the nights...
You really can't sleep?
I couldn't sleep. Wow. Most of the nights I was lying there, willing myself to sleep, trying desperately.
That's always a disaster. You can't do it.
But but even if I can't explain it. It wasn't even so much as the willingness. It was, I'm normally quite good at turning myself off to go to sleep because of the hours I do. So I know the routine. I'm actually sort of quite used to getting out of the mindset of someone who's awake. But the problem is that not only the lack of oxygen, but also you're lying on the ground as good as, even though you've got a mini mattress, a small mattress, it's so uncomfortable.
You took your mini up Mount Kilimanjaro?
I took my mini. That's how I managed to achieve it, you see, because I drove up.
Oh, you drove up.
Yeah, that explains it now, you see.
Makes sense.
The mattress is quite thin, so you don't really sort of get that protection from the rocks that you're sleeping on underneath. So it's bloody uncomfortable. Sleeping bag means that you, to some degree, can regulate your temperature, but the weather is so unbelievably extreme. During the day, it's quite warm. At night, when I say it's freezing, I'm talking -13, -14. It is absolutely freezing, and then some.
Bloody hell, boy.
So to try and regulate your temperature is a real challenge. You have to sleep many layers.
Schlepping up this mountain, by the way?
Well, there were 11 of us who are doing the fundraising, climbing.
Right.
But you have to have professional staff with you. Kilimanjaro is a national park, and you're allowed to enter that national park without professionals accompanying your trip. So the professionals who came with us, everyone had a Sherpa, who's the people who carry the heavier backpacks for us.
Sherpa Tenzing, with Sir Edmund Hillary, of course.
We have the heavier backpacks. We have the light backpacks, but you have the Sherpas carry the heavy stuff. I'm in awe of these guys. I'm telling you now, they carry 20 kilos plus. They carry chairs, tents, cooking utensils, food, water. You've never seen anything like what these guys do. And they walk so unbelievably quickly up there, as if you're just going for a stroll in the park. They just waltz off. And of course,
climbing. I want to get a mental picture. Are you sort of like climbing, or are you walking up a steep?
It's actually it's a combination of both. It's a combination of both. So what you do is by and large, it's a steep path, but occasionally you are actually sort of physically having to climb stuff as well. And I have to tell you, Tanzania do not have the same level of health and safety that we do here. So a lot of it's free climbing.
I'm shocked.
No, a lot of it's free climbing.
Hang on a minute. Hang on.
So you could slip.
The only time you've done climbing was in Waitrose. If you saw something on the top shelf, you might go for it.
On the top shelf, I can't reach it.
But what is this climbing thing? Because I wouldn't do it. I couldn't climb. I hate heights anyway. Anyone who knows me well knows I hate heights. Bizarre for what I used to do.
It was okay. You were under very strict supervision. You know,
are you roped together like normal, like you see in the movies, or not?
No, not at all.
But shit, so you're free climbing and you're not roped. Your mother's just fainted, by the way. But she didn't know.
I know. I didn't tell her this bit.
Linda's sitting at home chewing the furniture now.
No, I knew this was going to happen, but I didn't tell her this bit. But anyway, so you're free climbing for some of it, not much of it, but some of it, and it really is 1 foot wrong and lights out Vienna.
This is what I'm saying. This is not something lightly undertaken. is it? You're not roped.
Well, but this is all of the things that
you've got sod all training for free climbing. I mean, walking, okay, all of us can do that, but
no, I know, but this is the thing, and this is what I didn't really keep in mind when I agreed to do this challenge. You didn't think of things like this. But let me just sort of say as well what I was saying about the oxygen. Lack of oxygen meant you couldn't sleep. The other thing that lack of oxygen does is it removes your appetite. So, of course, when energy is essential to what you're doing, and you have to try desperately to eat whatever food you can, and the food is not great. I don't mean to be rude. You know, the chefs, they do as much as they can.
Did you send it back? Knowing you, did you send it back? Very limited wine selection.
I just didn't eat much of it. That's always not so much.
How was the single malt selection? Was it good? Good as a Soho Whiskey Club?
Oh no, you got get ready. Are you ready for this? Alcohol and caffeine banned because it's not good for the hike.
Oh, that's right, of course. Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty grim. But then the other thing as well to bear in mind is that through this all, the most important thing is to keep hydrated. Well, of course, the problem is that obviously there's no fresh water taps on the mountainside. No, obviously the same with Tanzania, not necessarily the best.
Is your car parking all right?
Tanzania, obviously not sort of best in terms of when it comes to regulating food and drink and all that malarkey. So what they do is they take waters from the stream, boil it up. They then give it to you chemically treated. So they'll put chlorine tablets in the water. And I have to tell you, do you remember the times when you used to go swimming and you accidentally take a massive gulp of swimming water?
Christ, it's disgusting.
Okay, right now think of hydrating yourself with just that.
No.
Okay,
the reason
that is what it was like.
The reason I'm laughing
horrendous.
so much, if it was just a hiker or somebody I didn't know, I'd be going, "Oh, really?" And I'd be quite polite. Having known Phil for so many years and know what he's like, listening to this, it's just like I don't know who he is anymore.
I'm telling you, right? If I'd have known, oh yeah, now okay, my mother raised
the big question we all want to know. Come on.
Okay.
Number ones and number twos up Kilimanjaro's.
Right. Let me make this very clear. I am now more at one with nature than I've ever been before.
Oh dear God.
When it comes to the toilet situation, we were one of the lucky ones because the organized group that we went with provide chemical toilets. Okay. Now the chemical toilets.
They slap a portaloo up the side of a mountain.
Oh, absolutely. They
Are you serious?
Deadly serious.
I was joking.
And here's where it gets a little bit grim, so forgive me. Kilimanjaro is a nature reserve, preserved, meaning that any waste has to be carried back down again. So can you only imagine the poor porters who have to deal with that? There's a thought for you.
There's you on a diet of curry.
I was not on curry, believe me. Believe me, I was not on curry. I was lucky I was on fresh air. But anyway, so as far as the toilet situation is concerned, is that vegetation is my new friend. I don't think it liked me very much, but it's my new friend. And when the inevitable happens, you have to go and trek off into the bushes.
You can trek out, I'm not going. Jesus.
You go trek off into the bushes and try and find a quiet spot. The awful truth is, though, that most of the quiet spots have already been taken. And as a result of it, as soon as you find a quiet clearing, you get a waft. Oh, you get a waft of a predecessor who's also found the quiet clearing. And it was quite extraordinary, really, because you realize afterwards the reason why there are so many appropriate spots to go and do what you need to do is because the vegetation has been fertilized. The vegetation has been so brilliantly fertilized by people who've come before me. As a result of it, you'd have to grin and bear the most disgusting conditions. I can't even begin.
I've got a vision that your mum would have gone to Costco and got one of those huge packs of Andrex, like 24. And there's some
that was the other
Sherpa,
thing.
and on his back, he's got the Costco pack of loo rolls, and he's dragging himself up the mountain.
Can I just say, that's the other thing as well. For God's sake, don't do what I did and mistake what a stinging nettle is, because it hurts.
Oh, you're joking me. Oh, you didn't. Please tell me that's a gag.
No, I'm joking. Of course I didn't. No, there was one of the first things I packed was loo roll, believe me.
Well, that's all because your mother just asked, what about the toilet situation?
Absolutely. Holy so anyway, God. Make no mistake, it was all pretty grim, to say the least.
Yeah.
I can hand on heart tell you that I spent most of the time feeling utterly sick, and I don't think it was the altitude either. By and large,
because of the water? The water must have been repulsive.
Oh, the water was repugnant. It was absolutely horrible because I can't explain how you're so thirsty because of what you're doing, but every time you're drinking, you just think to yourself, "I'm a kid again in a swimming pool who can't catch his breath." So you just took a gulp of swimming pool water. It was just horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Though I do have to say, though, that there is obviously something in it that gets you emotionally, because as soon as I reached the summit, I'm not going to lie, I did shed a tear. So I think it was just such relief knowing that the only way was down.
Yes, the only way is down.
But anyway, so look, all in all, an amazing experience that I will never forget, possibly for the wrong reasons, but I will never forget it. Wow. And I can also tell you that I'm very keen to make sure that in future I stay on level ground. So.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing that you did. I know I was writing to you all the time saying I was incredibly proud of you. It was brave. It was bonkers. You've raised a lot of money for a fantastic... Remind everyone what the cause was.
Oh, yeah. So the actual charity was one called Beyond, which is what they do is they go into schools and help young people with mental health struggles. Robert Van Buren, did you leave your mark at the top of the mountain, Phil? No, because there's no vegetation up there, so you don't get a moment. It's not possible. The top of the mountain is just gravel.
Have you got that picture? I can never work out how the hell to get the pictures up on screen, but I wanted to get the picture of you on top of the mountain so everyone can see. Meanwhile, let us bring in Queen of the... I've now called her the Screen Queen. Ladies and gentlemen, Chantal OBE.
I'm loving the new name.
It is your new name. Oh, look, there is Phil. Can you see, Chantal? That's Phil up the top of Mount Kilimanjaro.
So wonderful. I saw it on Facebook and I felt very proud for you as well, Phil.
Amazing.
Well
thank you,
amazing,
Chantal. Thank
amazing achievement. It really is.
Sorry, so they'll just say very quickly, Beyond, what they do is they go into schools, they help young people with mental health struggles. And I am not 100%, I haven't got the total yet, but bearing in mind there were 11 of us doing this, and I am quietly confident between all of us we've raised over £10,000. So
that's fantastic.
Wow.
And have you physically, this is a serious question, not a gag, have you physically now recovered? The headaches have gone and everything else?
Oh, yeah. As soon as you come back down to sort of level ground again, you go beneath 3,000 feet, 3,000 meters, I beg your pardon. Then the headache pretty much instantly goes. Appetite starts to come back. Lust for alcohol comes back, I can tell you. And then also, in fact, believe me, it left me. And then also I'd say that the only thing that really was a problem for a couple of days afterwards was just physical aching, because my legs were ridiculously sore for several days afterwards. I even managed to...
I'm so sorry, Chantal. This is from Luke Newman. I didn't put it up before. Sorry, Chantal. Congratulations, Phil. Amazing. Last night, I attended the BBC Three Counties Radio Make a Difference Awards. I was honoured to be nominated for an award for my work with 4 Men to Talk. Even more humbled and emotional to announce I won it.
Hey, well done, Luke.
Newman, bravo to you. That is fantastic. And
who presented your award, Luke? Was it Jonathan Vernon Smith? Is he still haunting the Three Counties studios? I don't know.
Well done.
I haven't been in touch with Three Counties for a long time.
And
thank you.
Ramsey, of course, just say this, which I was thinking. Did you edit the helicopter out of that shot, Phil?
Yes, I did, Ramsey. You caught me. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. He was actually in a 5-star hotel somewhere. Right.
Although, I have to tell you, though, I was lucky enough with the hotel I was staying at afterwards. I managed to book him for a massage after the event, and the masseuse. I can only begin to think that she must have questioned her own strength, because I was wincing like you would not believe. Literally, you'd think I was a puppy dog in barbed wire with half of the moves that she was trying to make. So I was so unbelievably sore. But anyway, But never mind. We laugh about it now. So I'm here. I've survived it. I'm not going to lie. Never again.
The Suchet family was certainly my oldest friend Peter and David, as in Poirot, and I think John went as well. Did what's the thing in South America? Picchu, I can't pronounce it.
Machu Picchu.
Thank you, Pokemon, whatever it is. And it was murderous. It was absolutely murderous. They all thought this would be okay. It was kind of the last thing they thought they'd do as three brothers. It was dire. It was dire. They all had enormous problems with it, especially as Phil was saying, the oxygen thing. No one realizes,
Nothing can prepare you for it. That's the problem. You just don't know how you're going to react until you're there. And that's the issue. So even though I was very lucky with sort of being able to afford the services of a personal trainer who's brilliant, and hi Tanya, by the way, she's fantastic, who really sort of helped me get in as best shape as I can. The truth is that nothing you do can prepare you for it.
Nah.
Wow.
I would have thought not. Remember, in an aeroplane, you need to be pressurized over, what is it? I think at 10,000 feet, you need the cabin pressurized.
Yeah.
Which never affected us because we were always very low. But remember that. So Phil is going way, way higher than that. Right.
I have to say, the other thing as well is towards the end, one of the tour guides, one of the guides up the mountain was literally dragging me up the last few feet. I couldn't do it anymore. So he literally just had my arm and he was grabbing me up the rest because he thought I was so near. He didn't want to leave me behind, which was very kind of him. But my God. It was a wee bit full on.
Like those black and white World War II movies, isn't it? Just leave me, Sergeant. Don't worry about it. I don't want to slow you down. And they hand him a gun and a cigarette, and he lies there, and they walk, and then they hear some gunshots. They look at each other.
It's not fair. No one offered me a cigarette, but anyway.
well, or a cigar in your case. Right, Chantas, let me just start. We've got people coming in with their suggestions of TV. I managed to find something purely by chance, no skill involved whatsoever. It was a lucky dip. And it's called Freud. It's on Netflix. It's in 8 parts, made in Germany. So it's very solid and rides nicely over. Right. No, it's made in Germany with English subtitles, set in Vienna at the time when Dr. Sigmund Freud was a young man. And it's dark as hell, but it was I binge watched it. It was fantastic.
Okay.
Just called Freud. Do not expect it's not realistic. It is not real. It's not based on any history. It's a kind of murder mystery type thing, but it's much, much more layered, complex than that. If you like your stuff dark, Freud on Netflix.
And you do like a bit of dark, but is it supposed to be Sigmund Freud? Is it supposed to be Sigmund Freud uncovering mysteries?
No, it's Sigmund Freud starting off and trying to persuade people that hypnosis really works.
Trying to persuade people I can be a cliche.
I bet you didn't see that coming.
It's that. So that's
okay,
what it's about.
Check it out.
But they avoided every kind of cliche because I really thought it was going to be, they call him in to solve the crime. And I don't mind that. I like there's a lot of shows like that. Like not The Mentalist. Was another one that was fantastic. Anyway, I can't remember. So
every time they did a retake, they called it a Freudian slip.
If you're faint-hearted, don't watch it. But it's very, very good.
Might be too dark for me then.
It probably will be. Emma Webb says my TV watch suggestion this week is a series called Crime on. It's on. I thought it was Crime on. Called Crime. It's on BritBox, starring Dougray Scott. Powerfully written and the acting first class, and it's shot very well too.
Yeah, I think I've seen it. It came out, I think, about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and Dougray Scott is wonderful. I think we talked about it at the time, but it's good.
Yes, I seem to remember that you. Yes, Alex is making the point, and it's a good point. I much prefer, if the show's made in Korean or German, to let them speak as they would speak. I don't want them to watch a dubbed version. It's awful.
I know.
I mean, they do their best, but it can't be the same as...
And can I also just say, Alex, thank you for your message. Thank you. So...
What? Found your watch. It was at the top of Kilimanjaro. Could you pop back and get it? That was the message.
Yeah.
Right. And that, and
I
one
tell
more
you for
TV.
nothing, I lost my fleece up Kilimanjaro. I did not go back for it. I did not go back for it, I promise you.
What the hell would you take it off for? And Michael in the south of Spain, Costa del Sol, says, just wasted 3 hours watching the absolute drivel that was Crossfire. I don't know what that is.
Yes. I put it, I have watched it. I had to decide last night whether I was going to talk about it today, and it didn't make the list. So, I mean, if you like something utterly predictable, it's a new 3-part series with Keely Hawes, who I totally adore.
And she's an she can do no wrong.
Yeah, she's an ex-policeman. It's BBC. It was a 3-part program that came out this week. It's a drama. She goes off on holiday with 3 other couples, or is it 2 other couples? And it's a bit of a cautionary tale. And then the hotel is attacked. I'm not going to tell you anymore. If that's your thing, then it'll do enough to satisfy you. But it's not great, and it gets sillier and sillier.
Oh, that's a shame. We like
anyway, there we are.
I got big news for you, Chantal. Big news.
Yes.
I'll
just go back to Kilimanjaro, shall
I? Would you mind? Because your fleece is up there. You left your fleece there.
Somebody else has got it now.
Bless him. He's gone now. Now that he's Sir Edmund Hillary, his whole personality has changed. He is the David Attenborough of Costco. I went back to.
And now, the fresh croissants to the left. And as we walk past the extraordinary selection of pastries, we see the way the jam and marmalade come together.
Do you ever have the problem if you just live with a dog and you go to Costco and you see everything, you think, I want that. That looks great. And then you think, wait a minute, what the hell am I going to do with 24 Danish pastries? I don't even know 24 people. It's just hopeless.
I always admire anyone over the age of 80 who shops at Costco.
Why? Why? Not an age limit thing. It's not disco, is it? Right. Sorry, Chantal.
I just admire that level of optimism.
Not at all. I mean, when you see an 80-year-old buying green bananas, you think, are you really sure?
That is terrible. Putting on a Pink Floyd album, you think, really? Going to get to the end of that? Okay, right. Chantal, we are all yours. We're all yours.
Are you quite sure you need enough washing tablets for 120 washes?
Let's hope so.
That is I'm going to Blimmin Hospital this afternoon. Shut up.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm having an eye procedure. I'm having an eye procedure which they've put off for ages. Yeah.
What,
so I popped into Tesco months ago. This is a mental health and well-being station. Months ago, I went into not specs, whatever the hell they call it, in Tesco for just a regular eye check, but of course that's been put aside because of COVID, so it was a bit late. He said, you got some debris in your eye. And I go, I haven't noticed. Tried to get it out, failed completely. And then they said, you got to go and have this procedure. And I'm okay with anything except eyes.
Oh, okay.
And I'm being absolutely open with you both and everybody watching and listening around the world. I'm terrified. Absolutely freaking out. I can't stand.
Well, now I just feel guilty.
My eyes.
Okay. Now I feel.
And I left my fleece up Kilimanjaro. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Right. Okay, we're ready.
Elizabeth Green wants to know whether or not we're just going to encourage her to give up shopping. Elizabeth, please come on now.
Well, Elizabeth, not for 6 years. No, you got 6 years, and then just.
My mother is chiming. My mother is chiming in. You're horrible, Phil. Well, I think you knew this already.
Yeah.
So you can't really
if she
be too
thinks
shocked.
that, imagine how everybody else feels. That's all I got to say on the subject.
Just as a mother's love is unconditional.
Well, it's not unconditional. She rented out your room and she's happy now.
No, right? Okay, rented out the room. Are you joking me? Told me yesterday, 2 drawers off of filling up the room. Literally 2 drawers. So bearing in mind, I
35 years
emptied out the room.
Off.
8 drawers. Actually, no, there's 10 drawers because there's 2 bedside tables. There's 8 drawers, 2 bedside drawers, full wardrobe, everything like that, a massive shelf, everything. No, all full up.
Gone.
What the hell is she putting in it, for God's sake?
Everything she couldn't fit into her wardrobe.
Where was it before? See, these are the things that drive me mad. Where was it all beforehand? It's none of my business. Anyway, she had a terrible day yesterday. your mother. It was all about you and your family today. God, Chantal's been working her socks off. Right, had a terrible day yesterday. 2 funerals and a laser treatment on my eye for 20. Oh God, don't tell me that.
Oh no.
Oh God.
God.
It's true.
Right, well, Chantal, what should we watch?
I was going to say, I'm going to move the conversation from eyes to ears,
okay.
which is about as bad as a 10-year gets. But actually, clearly, MRS is always trying to find things where, men are allowed to talk, and men talking together is always a good thing. And actually, this documentary that I'm going to suggest everybody watches is absolutely perfect to show you the benefits of a father and son finally getting round to sharing stuff. I'm talking about John Bishop, the comedian, and his son Joseph, who was, at the age of 17, overnight lost 60% of his hearing, which is probably eventually going to mean that he loses his hearing completely. And for the last 10 years, basically, the parents sort of went, well, you just get on with it. Just, you have to accept it. Just get on with it. And I think he has got a cochlear implant, which has helped improve his hearing, but basically his hearing is going to decrease. And they had put on a sort of stiff upper lip British thing. Let's not really talk about it. Let's not treat the child differently, and let him just, accept that he's got this illness and it's part of his life. So the premise of the documentary is that John decides to learn British Sign Language because he's thinking ahead for the future, and that he and his son may no longer be able to have a conversation where they can both hear on either side, just a regular conversation. And of course, he sets himself a goal, which is to do a stand-up comedy gig in British Sign Language. And the two, the father and son, Joe and his dad, go to learn BSL for the duration of this documentary. It's just a 1-hour doc. It came out, I think, either last night or the night before on ITV. And it's called John and Joe Bishop, Life After Death, which is clearly a great name.
That's so clever.
Absolutely, very clever indeed. I did a lot of background reading yesterday about British Sign Language, which I didn't know had started in the 16th century. And it's interesting because there are two bits to it. You can either do the sign language, which is literally just signing the letters and then just getting people to sort of understand the words through a lettering system. Or there's a second language, which is partly gestures, partly body movements, partly facial movements, as well as hand gestures. It's really fascinating. I mean, I've learned so much in the last 24 hours. But this documentary is really worth doing, really worth watching, if only so that you can see the harmony between the father and the son finally having a conversation of real importance that they had been avoiding basically for 10 years. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's heartwarming. Don't
There's
feel that it's
only one bit of sign language I know, and that's a pint of beer. Anyway, that's
You see, Chantal brings us to an elevated level, and in
what? Excuse me? That's useful.
Very useful. Well, in fact, there's a very good sequence where they go into a pub together. Or no, the son goes into the pub to meet other deaf people. And he's never been around other deaf people because he's always seen himself as a regular guy and never confronted his deafness. And then suddenly he's just like a young guy in his 20s and chatting to other young people in their 20s, and they are deaf. And he suddenly realizes there's a whole community out there that he can be part of. It's a beautiful.
And is it likely, Chantal, that he will get profoundly deaf? Is it likely?
Oh. I mean, he already is, and you can just begin to hear that his speech is changing and modulating slightly. So he's not getting as much in. So the way that he speaks is slightly different.
Yeah,
but it's good. It really is good. Worth watching.
I never know on things like Family Guy when that wonderful actress, or you'll know her name, Children of a Lesser God. Thank you. And it is, yes. And they take the you know what out of her mercilessly.
Yeah.
And then she walks on the stage in front of Seth MacFarlane and everybody and just rips. I mean, it's all set up, obviously. It's so brilliant. She's such a good sport. What a fantastic sport she is. Bless her.
And a brilliant actress and played a very good role in West Wing as the statistician who comes in to help the White House. and you hear her real voice occasionally, and then she always has a translator with her in West Wing, and there's some very funny comedy that comes out of that, but that's another show.
Okay.
So then I found a nice Netflix documentary, interesting Netflix documentary about, I'd actually heard of this guy. He's a financial journalist who works for the Financial Times in the UK, called Dan McCrum, who's very, very highly thought of. And he basically uncovered a fraudulent business that's like, it was the sort of PayPal of Germany, is the only way of describing it. It was a payment processing company. And Dan McCrum started getting information from people in the city who are called short sellers. These are the people who effectively bet on a company's share value going down. So we're back to betting again, your conversation from earlier. And a lot of people don't like short sellers because they see them as the sort of the magpies or the ravens.
Scavengers, aren't they?
The vultures,
really?
the scavengers.
Yeah, vultures.
Picking over the bones of a company that's collapsing. But he started getting lots of information from short sellers who kept saying, you really need to look into this company called Wirecard, because there's something funny going on. And actually, the story gets broader and broader and broader. It crosses the globe very quickly. This is a German documentary. It's partly in German, partly in English, but actually executive produced by Dan McCrum, who becomes the central character, the journalist who's out there, fighting the good fight and bringing down the baddies. And the story gets crazier and crazier, and it goes into funding porn websites, and it goes into political spy thriller territories, and then you get the Russian embassy being involved, and you think, hang on a second, this has just got tentacles beyond belief. But it's only it's a 2-hour documentary, came out this week on Netflix, and it's called Scandal. So if you like those big corruption documentaries and about one guy bringing the system down that was utterly corrupt from day one, it seems, then this is a good yarn. It's told incredibly well. Lot of very, very good key contributors, and it's a good watch. So if you like that sort of big business documentary, this is one to go for.
I always get so cross. I sit there, usually with everything.
Is that a general statement, or is actually?
I'm permanently furious about everything. But I always get so cross, as anyone knows me well knows. But I watch these things like, God, they got away, and if they get away with it at the end, like the Tinder swindler, I couldn't get that out of my head. Your recommendation, and I couldn't get it out of my head for days. I was livid, absolutely livid with it. Wow. Okay.
Can I just say, obviously, I wasn't here when Her Majesty died, and so of course I missed a lot of everything that was said about her and everything that was done around the time of her passing. And so when I was on the flight on the way back, I had the opportunity to watch a program called Elizabeth the Unseen Queen, and it was actually something that was brought out in time for the Jubilee earlier this year. But if you haven't watched it, I'd say even if one is a royalist or not a royalist, I mean, I have to say, if you're not a royalist, then frankly, you make me sick. But but a royalist or not royalist. But the point is that the actual program is a compilation of all of the royal family's home movies, and it is one of the most fascinating things. And what makes it even more incredible is that Her late Majesty narrates half of it. And I've never heard that before. I've never heard anything like that before, because you don't associate her doing that kind of thing. But
that's a find.
It was
sensational. It was a BBC program, so I'm fairly sure it should be on iPlayer now. I haven't checked it, but just based on the fact that it was obviously sort of around the time of the Jubilee, I would have thought a lot of the Jubilee programs are available now. But it's called Elizabeth the Unseen Queen, and honest to God, one of the most fantastic things on the royal family I've ever seen, because it features all of the late royals. I mean, you see images of the late King George VI, even King George V, features in it as well. Queen Mary of Teck is also in there. And it's all of these incredible and a young footage of Her Late Majesty the Queen Mother. It's all of these incredible bits of footage that the public were never meant to see, and now we can, and it's amazing. Highly recommend that.
Well, no, Chantal, you've made a 1,000,001 programs and had loads and loads of hits. No, it's not a gag. Technically, the coverage of the events, and somebody made a point, I wish I could claim it was mine, but you never saw one cable, one wire, one mic, nothing was out of place. It was extraordinary. I have to say, credit where credit is due. It was magnificent.
Yeah. No, I mean, the BBC, absolutely. I mean, they've been planning for this for years. My brother-in-law used to be the editor of Panorama and Newsnight. And he said that even 30 years ago, when he worked at the BBC, he worked on one of the early Queen's obituaries. I mean, that's how much planning has been going into that occasion. Years, decades worth of planning, and they absolutely pulled it off. It was flawless. I felt incredibly proud to be, a British, clearly, to have that wonderful history, but also to be able to put on a television spectacular that I don't think any other country in the world could have done that.
No, they can't. They can't. Americans can do great showbiz and great sort of fly part. Not being sarcastic, if you watch their football games, they're great. And, the Super Bowl and the halftime show, blah, blah, blah. But they can't do that.
Yeah.
They can't. They just can't. Well, it's a stupid question, but I kept thinking to myself as I was, dipping in and out and then watching it and then glued to it, is where do they rehearse that? Because it's so perfectly step perfect, you think, well, they don't do it in the middle of the night in the streets. We know that. So where do they?
No, that's exactly what they do. That is exactly what they do. They rehearse it in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
seriously.
Starting at midnight. I mean, basically they continually do it. And all the music, they have a whole refresher course every 6 months so that the music is as fresh as it can possibly be. And people haven't forgotten the notes or the words but no, they were every night, I think, in London over the up until the funeral, there was something going on in the middle of the night from midnight onwards, where they would just close the roads down and they would, march them all up and march them all down again and make sure that they were getting it right.
Can you imagine if you didn't know and you saw that, you'd think, what a fright you'd have.
Yeah.
I'd have a hell of a fright.
I tell you, for me, one of the most... I watched as much of the funeral coverage as I could, bearing in mind I was obviously in the African continent and there are certain broadcast restrictions, so I couldn't watch some bits and pieces. But from what I could watch over there, to me, one of the most spine-chilling moments was when the funeral cortege, this procession, was going down the Mall and they played the Death March. Oh my goodness me, that was one of the most extraordinary things to watch.
Yeah. Well, I rushed out there on Monday with my...
You did, yes, your pictures were lovely. Your pictures were lovely.
And then what was interesting to me, Phil, and and to you, Russ, that you're interested in how these things happen, I was fascinated to see that once the cortege had gone past us in Hammersmith, heading out of London towards the west, that we were all still sort of standing there chatting a minute later, and then suddenly everybody started looking back at the same piece of road, and then we realized that all the backup the backup vehicles were all there. So there was a backup hearse and there were backup outriders, and the whole thing was happening again, but the hearse, clearly the second hearse, was empty. So they were all there ready. If any of the cars in the first cortege had failed, they had a complete backup set of vehicles to replicate it, which I was fascinated
because the variables on that, I know that's not what you came on to chat about, but because it was the biggest event we've ever seen in the capital city, ever, the variables that could go wrong were gigantic.
Yeah.
And it was a wonder and a testament to their skill, organization, competence and professionalism that nothing did go wrong. It really was absolutely perfect.
I don't know whether or not, Chantal, if you saw this, read this, or anything like that, But my understanding was, I remember reading some report that suggested that over 3 billion people worldwide watched the funeral. And to give you some sense of context, there's 7.7 billion people in the world. So that means nigh on half the world's population were watching that funeral.
Well, that sounds like a lot, Phil, to be honest, because in this country, fewer people watched it than Princess Diana's funeral. Now, having said
that, yes, I was stunned by that.
It was 28 million, and 28 million is a lot. We're 60 million, I think, in this country, or thereabouts. So 28 million is nearly half our population. So 3 billion sounds like a lot to me.
Agree completely. That's what I said. I was very dubious when I said one report suggested it. But even so, it's still staggering to think how many people around the world must have watched it.
Yeah.
But still, let's see.
One of the things, you've touched on something that we haven't talked about.
According to the Radio Times, it says that 4 billion people worldwide watched it.
Lord. Okay, well, I stand corrected. That's
according to Radio Times. According to Radio Times, but even so,
several things stood out. One is you had a very small procession, cortege, number of vehicles with the king and the royal family, and then Biden rocks into town with something that goes on for about 20 minutes as it keeps it. What the hell? Anyway, and the other thing was, I wonder if it's a generational thing, in that, as you touched on, less people watched this in the UK than they did Princess Diana's funeral.
Yeah,
because I think the younger generation were like, okay, it's a shame they didn't have that investment. Whereas other people, people were crying. I cried. Yeah. I cried. I teared up.
I think you're right. There is a generational thing, but I think that also people were more emotionally invested in Diana, and in many ways, because other than this lovely documentary that Phil's talking about, I feel as though I didn't know the Queen very well. I didn't know
that was the beauty of it. That was the beauty.
Yeah, I didn't know what roses she liked. I didn't know what perfume she liked. I didn't really know any of those things about her because
I knew what her favorite breed of dog was.
Well, we do know about the dogs.
Mini Schnauzer.
But whereas Diana possibly overshared, and we felt that we knew everything in her life, and I think there was a greater emotional connection, especially with younger people, and it was a much more tragic event.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, one is someone who's lived a wonderful life to the age of 96 with a sense of duty and honor, and one ended up in a ridiculous car crash in Paris, which could have easily been avoided. One was not avoidable, and one was completely avoidable. So that's a double tragedy. What else have we found as we head up?
So I was going to talk to you about new drama on the BBC. Not a new drama, series 2 of something called Bloodlands, with James Nesbitt, the Northern Irish actor who we all absolutely adore. This time he's paired up for the second time in 20 years with Victoria Smurfit, who I have to declare is a good personal friend from Los Angeles, and she and I both repatriated at the same time back to the UK about 3 years ago.
Wasn't she in one of the Indiana Jones films? Am I going mad?
No, she wasn't, but she was in Cold Feet, so she was Jimmy Nesbitt's original Irish girlfriend in Cold Feet 20 years ago. And here they are again. He's a copper, but this is series 2 when we now know he's a bent copper. And she is a widow, icy, blonde. There's some gold bullion that's gone missing, and it's a murky old story. 6-part series, started on the BBC this week. You sort of need to go back and watch the first series to understand the Jimmy Nesbitt character, but it's going well. There are quite a lot of sort of strange eye movements from Jimmy Nesbitt. Everything looks very serious. But I've enjoyed episode 1 so far. So
and don't they do something where they make him look younger through technology?
Yeah, they sort of take him back 20 years to sort of what he looked like when he was in Cold Feet, funnily enough. And that's just about believable. But telly is what it is.
I do have to request we don't mention the terminology cold feet too often on this show. I'm afraid I'm still getting over Killy. But anyway.
Had you known what it was like, would you have gone, Phil?
Honestly, no.
No, you
No.
wouldn't.
Really?
I didn't think so.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have done it.
No.
I don't regret doing it, but I wouldn't have
No,
done
I get,
it if
no, I
I
get
know what I
that.
knew.
I get that. It's a hell of an achievement.
But anyway.
Chantal, thank you so much. You
you.
always bring fascinating stuff to us, and it's an absolute pleasure
Not at all.
every
It's
week.
my pleasure.
It's lovely. Have a lovely weekend.
Yeah, you too, guys.
Okay.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, welcome back, Phil. That's what I have
thank
to
you.
say. It's always lovely having Chantals on the show. I know so many people send me private messages. Can't wait for 12:30. Yes, we know. All right. Welcome back. What you did was no small achievement. I won't be here
Thank
on
you.
Monday. I have stuff to do.
Good luck with your eye procedure.
Oh, bless you. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I'll be back on Wednesday, and Phil will be back, God and fleece willing, next Friday. Have a great weekend. Bye.